How's it going, y'all? You know what today is, Lydia? You know what today is? It's Hump Day! Yes, happy Hump Day, y'all. It is the Hump. I'm back, Mark Mack, here with Lydia Hutchison this week. How's everybody doing? Oh, man, what a week, right? This is like the craziest week. It's like the last week of the year. I think most people are kind of like going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. Wednesday, Christmas, New Year's Wednesday. It's totally messed everybody up.
Yeah.
So this has been like the craziest week. I usually have like littler meetings this week. This week I had so many people want to book meetings and want to talk this week. I was even trying to push them off to January. They're like, no, Friday, 3:15. That's great. But this week on the Hump, we've got Lydia Hutchison. You and I have had some conversations. We've been on other shows. We've had some panel discussions. We never really sat one-on-one chopping it up like this. So I'm real excited about tonight. Let me take this off the screen because that's not where we're at yet. But I am just here to introduce a good friend, I hope, and somebody who I've had some fun conversations with. So I'm looking forward to tonight. How are you doing, Lydia?
Good, thanks. I'm glad to be here. It's a little bit earlier here. We're still enjoying some afternoon sun, but
it is 2:30, right? Yeah. That's always a kick when it's 5:30 on the East Coast. It is dark. It was funny. I had Adam Mandarovich on the show. He's from Australia, so like 16 hours ahead. So it was like the next day at like 2 in the afternoon, and he was sitting like in the sun and everything, and it was like pitch black here. It was really kind of funny, but I want to give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourself to my audience. Tell them who you are, where you work, what you do, what you're all about. Go for it.
Yeah, Lydia Hutchison. I am passionate about all things sales development, top of funnel. I started my kind of sales career as an SDR, climbed the typical progression from SDR to account manager to account executive. I thought that was where everybody was supposed to end up. Did that with IBM for several years. Learned a ton, had a lot of fun, but realized that I really just loved top of funnel. Call me crazy. So I had an opportunity to actually be an SDR team leader, which I took and have been in that spot ever since. I did leave like giant corporate world right as COVID hit. So I've been in startup land, which sub 50, so under 50 employees for the past 5-ish years. And wow, it's been quite a ride, but really focused on kind of building out the sales development operation and teams from scratch for startups at this point. So currently I'm at Acroll Data. We do a data readiness platform to help data teams and organizations find, manage, and keep quality standards on all of their data. And been here for just over a year and have an awesome team that I hired recently. And so we are going full speed.
That's awesome. Well, hey, top of funnel. I mean, if people who know me know that's what I do also. I spent 25 years or so being like a full cycle rep, territory rep, New York, national. And then when COVID hit, same thing. Like I had to redo myself, like the company I was working for, which was mostly territory sales, they kind of closed down. We were focused on hospitality. So hotels were gone for like the next 10 months. So the business pretty much was dead. And I reinvented myself and became an SDR just like that. Yeah. Like you. And it's funny to be my age and then be like and they look at that as an entry, like people in this industry were always looking at it as like an entry level role. And while it still remains to be, that some of the younger generation or you're first getting into tech sales or into sales in this capacity, SDR is the first step typically, right? But there is a little bit of a change going on, I think. I think some people are waking up. Some businesses are realizing that maybe there are other ways to do that top of funnel. But at the end of the day, and I think you would agree with me, I'm sure, and hopefully we'll get a little bit into this too, is, the phone and direct contact with a customer or potential prospect is really the bee's knees. I mean, it's where you get the most information, right?
Well, and sometimes it's the hardest job in the entire org. Like, we're doing the digging and the farming and the mining to give, our account execs good leads. And yeah, it's entry level, but I think a lot of people are realizing that they can, one, actually be and enjoy being an SDR lifelong, or, stay in leadership like me, where I'm passionate about helping, PDRs kind of develop their own skill sets. Or you do it individually like you do and create your own business out of it, because not everybody loves to cold call.
No. Do I love to cold call? I don't know if I really love. I love to talk to people. I wouldn't say I like to cold call. I think I feel like I'm still normal like anybody else. I don't like getting hung up on, and I don't like when people are a-holes and whatever. I just know that a lot of my conversations aren't like that, right? At the stage I'm at, right? And so I believe, like you, I could coach other people, even young ones, to have some similar experience so they can get more at-bats and get, better at-bats, even if they have less at-bats than most, because of, just the way things are, technology. And but you're right, it is the hardest job right now. With that being said, is it possible that all this bullshit talk about AI SDRs, is this something that do you think it's happening now, or is it really something that's just being kind of bowled over, like kind of just sort of tested, or just talk? Maybe it's more just talk, and people, it's not really going to replace SDRs. It's really can't do what a real SDR can do on the phone just yet. So what's your thoughts? Is it now? Is it later? Is it 2030? Is it?
I think, well, here's the thing. I have a really strong belief that you should automate everything that you can and nothing that you shouldn't. And where that line is drawn for me is human interaction. I think, I don't know if you get these emails on a daily basis, but I can tell what comes from AI and what comes from a person. And I will tell you that you're all safe. Your jobs are fine, because those emails are absolutely horrendous. So if that's any indicator of what the AI SDRs are going to be doing, I'm not worried at all. I did only once got a call from like an AI sort of bot that was doing a pitch thing. And this was over a year ago, so probably still experimental, but yeah, definitely wasn't impressed. I know there are some companies that are launching to kind of promote this sort of new business model, but I think, if you're, especially like here at ACO, where we're talking to leaders in the data space, they don't want to talk to a robot. Like if somebody calls you and you like has no regard for like you as a human, or sort of, that's the problem with sales, I think. And why we're looked down upon so much, unfortunately, is because we've taken that like human element out of sales and prospecting. We blast everybody with canned emails. We make a bunch of phone calls without doing research or without even knowing if these people are target profiles. And so, it's like nobody wants to answer the phone for that type of stuff. But when we focus on actually talking as a person to a person, that whole experience changes. And so I don't think that's something that AI can do.
Yeah, exactly. I actually had an experience, my experience with them, and some of them are designed for inbound, and some have been attempted to be used on, like, let's say collection calls or something like that on an outbound. But what I think is weird about it is they may be efficient in sort of doing certain tasks, right? But I think what happens with them is, if you're having a conversation with it, if you're having a conversation with it, and like you might say, it might ask you something, and you might say something, right? Or the prospect might say something that you as a human would then react maybe and anecdotally and like tell a story or laugh or something of that nature, which is normal, right? But the bot doesn't know how to do that yet. It'll just go on to the next task question or comment that it's programmed to make, because it doesn't get what that person just said, because there is a level of vernacular, there's a level of there's subconscious American cultural things at work that, or other nations of cultures at work, that the bot just simply isn't able to learn yet on how to react to, and that's when you know it's fake, right? Yeah. And I don't think it turns me off per se. It's just like when I get those things, like I'm trying to test it and try to break it, and like I'm trying to make it like get screwed up, because I know what it is. I got a call the other day. It was pretty legit. I mean, it sounds people are using the same voice. Yes. There's like this one common voice out there, and I'm picking up on that. Yes, I'm hearing it. But that's the human piece of it, right? That I wanted to add on top of what you said, which is like, it just doesn't react the same way. Like you want that person to laugh or giggle or tell me a story about whatever personal, like, and that's what I'll do on the phone. And that's how I build rapport, right? Whereas the bot's not, I don't think people are thinking about it in that context either. When they're trying to employ it in their businesses. They're not thinking about like, oh, how can I make this, I'm just trying to eliminate that role, that human who's, may not show up one day, doesn't feel well one day. People are trying to think like that's the key. I don't give a shit. I don't know about you, but like the SDRs I've ever worked with who are really grinding it out, maybe you were like this, like me, we're cut from a similar cloth. There's no sick days. Or if you get sick, you get sick,
Don't bring it to the office, please. But yeah, I mean, you know
what I mean?
Time is money, and there's going to be a use case for automation in certain scenarios. But I think for the most part, in the SaaS space where we're, selling to, people that want this human experience, it's just not, I mean, who knows? Maybe in 10 years, things will be completely different. But like also one of the most important skills to me for SDRs that you can't teach is curiosity. So if somebody says something like, I was just talking with somebody on my team earlier about how they, someone's saying, oh, well, I can't disclose how we're doing that today. And it's like, well, okay, is that just because you don't want to have this conversation with me? Or is there actually a reason that maybe we should sign an NDA and then have a conversation? And so then you kind of get to the bottom of stuff. And I just can't see a robot doing that, to be honest.
No, absolutely not. So maybe it's, and this is another kind of term that people have been throwing around, maybe it's just an AI empowered SDR, right?
Sure.
So
help you do research, have it help you, like we use Claude a lot here, and that's amazing. Like, help me understand what the initiatives are for this company when it comes to AI, or so that this is where you augment rather than automate. And for that, I think they're amazing use cases.
What's that? What's the product that you just mentioned?
Claude. It's like a chatbot thing. It's similar to ChatGPT, but I'm a little.
Oh, is it like CLAUD?
Yeah. Yes.
.ai?
I think so. But yeah, again, to help with things like research, to help with sort of, your 10K reports, your territory planning, things like that. There's absolutely room to automate things and help you be more efficient. But again, when it comes to that human element of conversations at the top of the funnel, any place in the funnel, you just don't replace that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me ask you this. I mean, let's stay on this SDR topic. Obviously, we know it well. We're in the trenches, and we'll talk a little bit about coaching in the trenches in a minute. But do you think, I've been having this conversation with a lot of the guests that have come on, and there's obviously been this whole kind of metamorphosis of predictable revenue model, SDR AEs, and things. People are questioning the silos and this and that, and it's buyer's journey, not our journey. Everyone has their own process. It's like a whole lot of nonsense, right? But the SDR just by themselves, right? The way the organizations typically would view that role is they need to get meetings, right? And we've talked a little bit about how the compensation packages could lend to the cultural silos that are occurring. But the question I really have is, when you're coaching and you're talking to SDRs and your SDR team, I mean, like you're trying to get meetings, but are we trying to have conversations? Are we trying to have people understand that we're not really trying to sell them? We're not pushing, we're just asking questions. And sometimes I think, an SDR, especially young, they want to excel. They want to get into the AE role. There's like these what do you call it, stressors for that, and then maybe they're getting commissioned off of it. So where does your head go when you think like when one of your reps is like stressing about that and not getting any meetings, but yet that's what they want, that's what they need, but they're not focused. They're focused on the meeting and they're not focused on the conversation. Like, how do you change direction with a rep like that?
I actually had this conversation this week. And really what it comes down to is detaching from the outcome. And I said, go into these interactions with the goal of disqualifying people. And I know that sounds crazy and you're probably like, what the heck, why would I do that? But it really changes the entire experience for not only you, but for the person that you're talking to as well, because you're not so stuck on, I've got to walk out of here with something on the calendar. Yeah. You're then in the mindset of, I got to figure out how they're getting the job done today. If there are any problems and implications with the status quo. And if so, then there's room for a conversation. But if not, like I had a guy walk in the other day. My husband called and said, hey, AT&T is down here and they can give us cheaper internet. And I'm like, okay, well, it sounds interesting. Let me go down and check it out. So he goes through this whole pitch and he's like, yeah, we can give you the same internet for $100 cheaper. And I'm like, okay, but I also have cable as part of this package. So he sat down and priced the whole thing out. Turns out I'm going to be walking away with the exact same bill, but internet that's twice as fast. But I don't have problems with my internet. I don't need internet that's twice as fast because what I have currently is just fine. And so the pain of changing is greater than the pain of staying the same. And sometimes that means it's not a fit. I think we have to just remember that not everybody wants or needs what we have. And it's all about having a conversation with the right time, with the right person who has the right problem. And that's why what we do is so hard, because you just have to dig through and find those Easter eggs.
You know what? You just made me think of something in relation to this AI thing, right? And the fact that I fear that when they get employed, right, even though there may be an ML piece, it's learning, it's getting better, perhaps, there's still this like volume that it's pushing through. Maybe consider calling it burning the TAM, burning the total addressable market, because they're going out and there's no recourse. You can't teach it. You have to reteach it in whatever manner it gets taught, which takes time and money and back office stuff, right? But whereas like an SDR human, Lydia as the leader can listen to a call and then say, wait a minute, she's a little off. Let me have our coaching period with her. And then you can coach her, right? And within 15 minutes or whatever, and you can correct the action and then they can move forward. There's no way you could do that with an AI SDR. You can't do that.
Well, and even when they'll come to me and say, hey, I just had this call and it was kind of weird. I don't really know what I could have done differently. And we jump on a call and we review it together. Like that's human. You just don't,
Yeah. That's another thing I really think is a challenge in the industry is, you've got a lot of management, but not a lot of managers, do coaching, or if they do coaching, they do it in very little pieces, or it's like
dashboard jockeys.
Yeah. What is it?
Dashboard jockeys. They just watch the dashboard and say, we need more meetings. And there's no actual
Well, I think what happens is they do that. They've been trained and taught what those numbers mean to them. So it must mean this. If this is what the the metrics look like, then it must be we need more of this or we need this. What I hate is the leaders who will sit down and they'll try to role play. Like, oh, let's role play. Like, so who's going to play the prospect? You?
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe why don't we have another SDR play the prospect, right? Because they're the ones that hear those prospects every day. Maybe they can act more like it than you do, unless that leader is actually talking to customers daily and understands how those customers think, and then maybe can offer that kind of expertise, right? What I don't like is the managers who don't coach and who don't even offer their SDRs to get their own coaching, or like give them some resources. Say, hey, go check out Lydia Hutchison.
I think it's unfortunate for a lot of leaders because they just weren't empowered to be leaders or trained or coached. What happens normally is you've got this top performer SDR who then gets pushed into a management position, and they've got no leadership skills. They haven't actually. And I understand this is a little bit of a challenge for smaller startups, but for new managers, like, everybody needs to go through some sort of like actual leadership training that's not necessarily specific to sales, but understanding different personality types and how you can coach and empower based on those different types of people. And I was at Keysight for several years, and the first thing they did was send me to leadership training, and that was one of the best experiences I ever had. And because of that, I think I am the way that I am, and I'm able to actually excel in the startup space without those resources because I had them, and I kind of, had that preparation. But I think that's a problem. Is so some people get thrown into this role and they just don't know any better. They don't know what to do because there's nobody to show them.
I mean, there's a few out there that actually who even admit they only spent so much time in the role or as an AE, and now they're the leader, and they sit down next to them and really just try to help from a support perspective. I mean, I respect those guys, but it's like I've always found it best to coach from the trenches, show them how it's done. So talk to me a little bit about what you do on a regular with your team.
Well, as I mentioned, I just onboarded a new team, and one of the first things we did in the first week, because I'm a horrible person and went on vacation right after they started, but I said, but actually, we were together for 3 days, and by the time I left on the 4th day, they were on the phones and booking meetings. So kudos to my guys. But what we did was I put together a list of every single cold call recording that I have had since I've been here, because for the first year while I was building out this operation, it was really like, what tools do we need? What's the process going to be? What are the talk tracks? Everything from scratch. And so I had all of that stuff until I proved that out with me as the SDR, essentially. Then I was ready to actually scale it. But them being able to listen to my calls, they said, is what attributed them to being able to book meetings so quickly, was that they heard real live examples. I mean, you can role play for hours on end, but there's always going to be, you don't know what's going to happen in the real scenario. And so having that type of stuff is extremely helpful. And then also once a week, we get together for an hour and we listen to calls together. If there's something specific that you want to bring that you need help with, let's do it. I bring my calls as well. We talk through the good ones, the bad ones, sort of what are the common objections that we're getting and how can we, approach them differently. It's just very collaborative. And I feel like I've been in situations where I'm managing global teams of 20, and it's really hard to stay actually prospecting yourself. But when you're able to do that, you just get such a different and valuable data point because you're actually testing out the messaging yourself. You're hearing how people are reacting yourself. You're able to pivot live and then share those, tips with the rest of the team. So I know sometimes being a player coach is not ideal, but I honestly wouldn't have it any other way at this point. It's really
well, you've also and you figured out the way you block it out. You make sure you do it because consistency is also key. I think that's the challenge. A lot of teams, especially even in startup like worlds, probably what happens is, they have a lot of that face-to-face interaction early on, but then unfortunately as it scales, right? And you have 50 on the team or 30 on the team, it's quite difficult to have, let's say a call where you're going to review some calls. But that's why it's good to have other people bring or maybe dedicate more than one time if the team is that big. But, I think one of the biggest, one of the biggest kind of positives that's helped our teams and teams I've worked with is doing those weekly call reviews. In fact, my partner, Josh, and I, we were actually for a long time, and we still do it, maybe not as much, of course, as I am saying that it's the challenge with startups, but we really break down calls every day. And even the good ones, like he always says to me, that's something you mentioned, and I want to kind of dial into that a little bit, is that the good ones, what I've noticed sometimes, and what's interesting about dissecting the good ones is oftentimes the good ones, people say, oh, this was a good call. Like your rep will say, here, this was a great call. Check it out. And then when you listen to it, it's a good call, but it was an easy call because the person was in the window, or maybe they were a pushover, or whatever their personality. And so what we like to do, and I don't know if this is something you guys do, or maybe you can, and moving forward, is we like to play, role play the other kind of, and we don't actually do the role play, we just talk about it, but role play the other personality. So for example, if you just got a manager versus the VP, right? How would the VP, the type A personality, have reacted to the things that you said? Right? And then how can we maybe tweak this or tweak that, just in case you notice or feel or identify that you have that type A personality or that type B personality on the call. And like, or let's say that he didn't say that and he said this, what would you have, how would you have taken the conversation? And we start to dissect the call a little bit like that, because sometimes the calls that they say is good, there are good calls, don't get me wrong, but sometimes they're easy calls, right? Where like they kind of fell into your lap. And so that's fine. It's still a good call, but let's talk about it if it ended up this way or if he said that. So
the best kind of calls, in my opinion, are the ones where somebody starts with brush off in the beginning and you keep them on the phone for 9 minutes, regardless of what the outcome is, right? You keep them talking.
That's a win. That's a total win. Yeah. If I can, so I have, one of the other things too, I think is funny. I try to do, I try to have those little like weird things. Like I'll like, if anything on the call, if they end the call and then they say goodbye, if they say my name, I feel good.
Yeah.
I don't care how bad the call was or how like they weren't the right ICP or whatever it was. Usually they are the right ICP, but just not in the market.
We walk away having had an actual human experience, and that is a win in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I said my name in the first half second of the call.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, 4.5 minutes later, after a dialogue, he's now saying, yeah, hey, have a nice day, Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, they were listening, and that makes me feel good, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because people aren't listening when you're talking on the phone sometimes.
They're trying to get off.
And that's why. Well, that's why they think that's why they think it's like it's a sales. They think you're always trying to sell them something, like, and that's one of the reasons. So my Friday afternoon tips that I've been giving has started with not using your company name when you open the call. So like you'd be, hey, I'm Lydia, how's it going today? As opposed to I'm Lydia from Acroldata, because once you say the name of the company, you're starting like every other conversation cold call they've ever had in their entire life. So there's no way, you're already backtracking. Now, even if you can get past it and you're really good enough to get past it, or even you don't even have to be that good, but you're able to kind of continue the conversation. Sometimes that you're still in that box in their head, and they're like you said, they're trying to figure out, okay, how can I get out of this conversation as fast as I can? So,
and I'm famous for of course I answer calls. I'm sure you do too, because it's good karma for us. But 9 times out of 10, I'm like, can you just get to the point and tell me like what it is that what your value is, and I'll let you know if I need it, because I think we just get lost in it's no wonder people want to get off the phone, right? It's painful.
Could be. I do like saying, sometimes I'll deprecate myself, and I'll be like today, a guy said, he was, maybe I was slow playing it a little bit. He's like, get to the point, right? And I'm like, and then I ripped it out, and which I don't normally like to do that, but like I ripped it out, and it was just like the top line thing about, but I kind of shortened it really tight, and I said, how was that for 30 seconds? Was that painful? And he was like, nah, you're good, man. You're good. Yeah, I'm not the guy. You need to talk to Craig Sims. And I was like, see that? You helped me out anyway. Today, this week has been crazy. Like I thought like from Monday, I was going to be like, you can't do till January 8th. Okay. Yeah. January 10th, January 15th. I wasn't even pushing it. I just let it happen. These conversations just happen. Person's like, I need to get this done before Friday. Yeah, can we meet tomorrow? This was like yesterday, right? Yeah, sure. And then this other guy, next call I had, it was like, or next meeting I booked, I said to the guy, it was today, right? And I said, it's Wednesday already. I don't know if you're too tight for the week, but maybe we shoot for January. He's like, no, I can do Friday, 3 o'clock if you want. I was like, okay, I can do that, and like it was so unexpected because normally, I mean, I can't even know how many years gone by. Around 10, 12, 15, December 15th after that,
Sure.
it's always been like, hit me up after the new year, hit me up after the new year. And I'm really shocked to hear a lot of what I've been hearing this week. This was like my busiest week. I had like 30-something meetings. It's crazy.
Yeah, the guys have had a lot of connections this week. I mean, I've been trying to schedule my 1 hour call blocks where I end up only getting like 15 dials done because I get sidetracked every time something comes in. But I was impressed. I've been impressed this week with the amount of conversations that we are actually having and still booking meetings. When you're right, usually it's like people are just completely checked out.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about data because you are Acral Data, right? And so I'd love to learn exactly what you guys do. But, for me, coming into this space several years back as a working in a sales development agency, I didn't really have to be involved in the data research and collection. And I realized at that time, how could I complain about what the data that I was getting, because I really wasn't like procuring it or curating it or whatever. We had a whole team in RevOps, and so I don't have that for the last couple of years. So I've been always, of course, doing my own, Zoom Info, Seamless, Sales Intel. We've used a lot of them, right? And there's a whole lot of new ways to get data today, but I still think like when you kind of come down to it, because I feel like all of these platforms are still kind of searching whatever's available to them to find this information. And if that information that's out there is wrong or hasn't been quote unquote updated, then it's just going to return this bad information. So I think, in 2021, I would say it was about 70%, maybe 65% accurate. I think some of it is leveled off because people have actually stayed in some jobs over the last few years. And a lot of them have changed, but they've done some updates. So I think it's gotten a little bit better. But I know you're in the space. I know we talked a little bit about waterfall, but for me, data is the biggest problem, and just the curation of it all is just like, ugh.
I'm gonna date myself, and you guys are gonna realize how really, really stinking old I am right now. But when I first started cold calling, we didn't have databases. We used to have to buy lists from, marketing companies that put the lists together for you. And so I remember when I think it was just. Well, Inside View was one of them. And then DiscoverOrg came out, which is now Zoom Info. But when DiscoverOrg came out and they had the org charts, it was like, oh my gosh, like we have all this data at our fingertips. And it was really, really expensive. But if you worked for a big enough company, you were lucky enough to have it. And so that was awesome because back then, like people actually stayed in their jobs for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And they had desk phones where the numbers didn't change. And, it was all great. And then as soon as the whole mobile era came up and, COVID really just turned the world on its head. But we're at a point now where you are just going to have to deal with the quality of whatever data you get. And here's the thing. I've used pretty much all of the main providers, and they all have their pros and cons. And personally, if you're looking for one, get a sample specific to your ICP and then decide who has the best data. But for me, it's generally all the same. I think that's what we started talking about, where the waterfall enrichment comes in, is like, to get the best data, you typically have to have 2, 3, 4, 5 different data sources where you can then sort of cross-validate and figure it out. But who wants to pay for that? So it's tough. And I think I mentioned to you earlier, I really love, shout out to Cloud Lead, where and Phone Ready Leads, those are awesome, where you can have people actually validate the data for you so that you can focus on the good stuff. But I think the other benefit is, first party data wherever possible. So lean on your marketing department to have, phone number fields in those gated assets and as part of the booth scans at trade shows. And then you're actually able to get a hold of people. But yeah, with the speed at which people change jobs in the past 5 years, I am a victim as well. It's really difficult. And I looked at my LinkedIn profile 6 months in, myself in one of the databases 6 months after changing my LinkedIn profile, and it still wasn't updated. So that, just goes to show that, like, even when the companies are doing human validation, like, there's still that delay.
Well, it's not getting back to like, well, you're saying if there are companies that are doing that and then they have a database that you then get sourced out of, then it's not coming up, right? Then yeah, it's not being updated. But they all claim that. Like, I think that's one of the questions people always ask. Well, how often is your database being updated? It's like, oh, every day we get a download of 1 million. I got all kinds of like ridiculous statistics from the various companies I've worked with. Check this. I'll tell you a crazy story. Sales Intel. I'm not ashamed of saying it, but they, for some reason, we were using them, and they have a very similar to ZoomInfo. They have like a half thing that called Reach Out. So like it's the Chrome extension. It only comes out a little bit, or it comes out all the way, which is the main database, right? And then when the Reach Out, right, they'll give you information in the Reach Out that isn't necessarily 100% verified.
Right.
And people are downloading from there, right? So anyway, so in Sales Intel, check this, right? I was downloading from the Reach Out, or whatever. They don't call it Reach Out, they call it something else. But I was downloading from the Reach Out, and I could see the numbers. I could see they looked good. They looked like regular American, USA-based numbers, address, email, right? And I exported it to Salesforce, right? And then, of course, started working these lists, right? And I'm seeing in my dialer like all of these European numbers, overseas numbers. What the hell is this, right? And so I go back and I'm seeing like these imports going, and I'm seeing the regular, but it's exporting a completely different set of data, right? So we tell Sales Intel on support ticket, we start a support ticket with Sales Intel. They, of course, the very first thing that every SaaS company says, they think it's your fault. So they say, do this, do that, do this, do that, right?
Turn it off and restart it.
Restart your computer, shut down the grid, your local, electrical grid, and then let me know. But no, it's true, right? They start there, and so we decided, all right, we'll do everything they ask us to do, right? And so we did it all, clear the cache, reloaded the Chrome extension, still going on, right? And so they don't believe us. They think it's on our side, and we say it's not on our side. You need to investigate it. We showed them screenshots. We're doing it right in front of them. They couldn't believe it. And I was like, well, dude, somebody has to be the first, right, to tell you there's a problem, right? Not only were we the first, but they learned from that investigation. Now, by the way, we only exported maybe 1,000 leads. They had over 500,000 leads that had been affected by this bug.
They should have paid you.
Well,
we're figuring it out.
So I thought to myself, I'm like, well, listen, the point of me bringing this up and why I think it's the biggest problem in sales is because, like, I mean, that was obviously an error, right? But let's just imagine we're using these tools, these AI tools, these data tools, and we're just saying, oh, okay, they returned some things to us. Oh, it must be good. Export it to Salesforce. Now you got shit in Salesforce because some of that stuff's not good, right? And so we're exporting it to Salesforce. We're importing it to SalesLoft. SDR teams are banging out phone calls to nothing, right? To wrong numbers, to unvalidated numbers, right? And so I can only imagine, or these overseas numbers, and they're getting nowhere, right? But the thing is that what's happening is it's dialing all the wrong numbers. Let's say you have a power dial or a parallel dial, it's dialing it. Let's say it gets a voicemail, or it just goes away, right? It doesn't tell you that that's a problem number because it could be a legit number and it just doesn't go through.
You're burning your own number too.
Exactly. And so that to me is crazy. And they didn't believe us. They were like really, they kept coming over the top. And I said, you know what? We're done with you. And they wouldn't even credit us they didn't give us a credit. And we walked away. We went with ZoomInfo right after that for the last 2 years.
I hate to pile on, but I didn't have the best experience with them either. But
ZoomInfo?
No, Sales Intel.
Yeah. And then don't get me started. I mean, I don't mind. Listen, we're not the only ones in this world that have had these experiences with these data sources. Like, some people don't like Seamless for a lot of other silly reasons. Personally, the reason that Seamless ticked me off, and I'm not afraid to say this live, is like the sales process, right? And I like to talk a little about this with you because I think as an SDR, one of the biggest challenges or in the industry had always been the handoff,
Yeah.
right? And so this was like a ridiculous handoff. It seems. I swear to God, like this girl calls me up and goes, I just wanted to let you know. I just wanted to ask if you wanted to, like it was around now. She's like, I just wanted to call you and ask, I'm your account rep. I just wanted to ask you if you would be interested in learning about our end of the year discounts.
How are things going? What's your experience been like?
Yeah.
I mean, you're
go there.
Before you actually bought it.
Yeah, this was before I knew of them, because I had already had it, and this was like after I had canceled and I went with something else for a year, and they were just following up, and they said, yeah, so it was okay. But the thing was, is she's like, she said, do you want to hear about these discounts and da da da? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? Oh, hold on a second, I'm going to get my colleague. And she literally like didn't even put the phone on hold. It was like she went like this because I could hear everybody in the background. Hey, Jim, like she didn't shout out to Jim. She probably IM'd him, but it was like literally you're going to pass me to somebody else across the room. They're sitting in this giant bullpen of people, wherever, right? And so they get me over to Jim, and I'm like, whoa, wait, what? And then I'm like, why couldn't, what? Are you guys in the same room? I hear all this noise. They're like, yeah. And it's like that. It's like bro culture maybe there. I don't know. But like it's very hyped up, which don't get me wrong. I mean, listen, I've been in those environments and they produce, but that's what's given us a bad name. And so the handoff, to this person, and then he did a little bit of a discovery and said, oh, well, maybe we do. I go, dude, I don't need a demo. I've been on your platform already. You're not listening. Don't you know? And then like every year I'll get a call from a different rep. That's the other thing too. I get a call from a different rep claiming they're my rep, which is true. They are, because they're just handing off the account. They're handing off the account. And I know what that's like because I used to work for Sherwin-Williams. And when I joined Sherwin-Williams, they gave me a territory. And in that territory, there were 400 accounts that have already been working by a different rep. And you know what? The sad thing about it is, I remember this. I used to walk into people's offices, and for a while, the territory in New York City burned through a couple of different reps. So the first thing they would say to me is like, hey, you're Mark. Oh, nice to meet you. You won't be here for too much longer anyway, Yeah. Oh, a new rep already? And like imagine having to backtrack from that. Now you're providing that experience seamless to these people, and they're like supposed to feel confident about the data. I mean, seriously. Oh, I could talk all day about the trials and tribulations of certain data sources, but I just think like, is the waterfall enrichment really the best way these days?
I think it depends on your business model, right? If you're a clay guru and you're good at it, I definitely am not. I am intimidated and don't want to make that business. I am not afraid to admit it. Then fine, cool, go for it. If you run an agency, yeah, you probably should do some sort of waterfall enrichment. If you're like me and you're running a team and you found something that mostly meets your needs, okay, cool. We use Apollo. We have, a decent enough accuracy rating. And then we have a lot of first party data, like I mentioned, that we have really good luck with. And then
how are you acquiring that? Is that like sort of lead magic off your website?
Downloads, things like that. Yeah. People have actually provided their information. And then, like I said, I love things like Cloud Lead and Phone Ready Leads where you can actually get, channel validated data. One of the things that Cloud Lead does that's a little bit different and I like is they will actually say like, hey, these people actually genuinely engage a lot with email. So maybe, do email them, or these people picked up the phone in the first ring, or this person I've called 10 times and they never picked up. And then you kind of know where to focus your efforts on which channels.
So you basically believe in phone validating it yourself, and essentially, right? Because I mean, look, I think that's, and I'm dying to get him on the show, Sean Cease, but he and I talk a lot about this. We go in the comments a lot of times back and forth, and it's like the systems and the software have been developed because of the laziness of if you just pick up the phone and call, Yeah. What was it?
And those tools then ended up ruining everything.
Kind of. I mean, look, the old way of banging the phone and getting the information firsthand is, is the same as like you're saying, you're getting these inbound. Listen, I've never had in this industry, I've never had inbound, and right now I'm handling a company. One of my partners is, we bought a company in Ohio. It's a bus company, so they sell handicap buses and vans and childcare vans and schools and stuff like that, right? And he's got all the calls like forwarded to me, right? Because their admin isn't like, they get a lot of what could be a sales call coming in, and the admin lady that's been there like 30 years, she just is like takes messages, right? She doesn't really handle it, and so so he's got it coming to me, right? So I'm getting all these calls from Ohio, but I'm setting up meetings, right? And I am doing outbound too, and setting up meetings. But the inbound just makes me, honestly, it makes me feel good a little bit. Like I'm not, because I've just never had it.
Yeah.
Right.
Not either, for sure. This was the first place and why I took this job. And I was like, oh my God, people are actually excited about this product and this space, and what a
yeah. And when you have that, it kind of, look, I do believe that, it like, especially if, I think inbound is a good way to train. Is a good way to at least get them comfortable with the product and the talk track and the problems, because somebody's going to call in and actually tell you they have the problem. Hey, I'm suffering from this, or they're going to answer the ad that was focused on the problem. So the inbound, so what the problem is, you can dig a little deeper if you train them the right way, and then they still got to set it up and work it through the process. So I think it's a really good learning position, like an inbound, but you have to have it.
Yeah.
How many companies have that inbound?
I'm more of a fan of giving those types of leads straight to the account executives, because I'm thinking about it from the buyer experience. Like I was looking at a database recently where the BDR would not give me pricing. I just want to know if this is within my budget or not. And I had to talk to them before I could get a demo. And it was like, why are you making it so difficult for people to give you their money?
Right.
So, when people are coming inbound and they've specifically said, I have this problem, I'm looking for this solution, I want to know more about you, give it to the account execs so they can actually do what needs to be done. I love the BDR team to focus on things that are, inbound chats. Sure, we'll talk through it and make sure that we align with what you're looking for. Web form fills, things like that. But I think there's also, one of the problems is we make it really hard for people to buy things. And the thing is, once someone comes across your company on their own, they've already done like 70% of the sales process by themselves, right? They've done research. They've talked to their communities. They've looked up reviews. They know what their options are. And I think by the time they land on your doorstep, you've got to be really careful with the way that you execute against them.
I honestly think it's not a done. Inbound leads are not a done deal, right? No. Like you're most likely either last to the show, or even if you're first to the show, that's good because they called you first. But if you're somewhere in the middle, you're the patsy, right? You're the guy who's going to give them the price so that they can go back to the guy they really like or the company they really like and get them to lower the price. I mean, look, that's the nature of those kinds of things, I think. But you're right. I think inbound, like if it's that tight, like go to the AE, because why put that little extra step in there? It doesn't make any sense. They're ready to go. In some cases, they already have a budget. You don't really, you want to fully qualify, you should go right to the AE coming in. And they're probably likelier to have a much higher close rate if it did go directly to them. Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, like, so I've even changed the talk tracks. Like, I feel like when we talk about the handoff, right, again, which is a challenge to me, it starts with the cold call, right? When they're setting up the meeting, I think a lot of SDRs find themselves in this sort of pattern because they may have been taught it as an easy way to kind of set up the meeting. But prospect starts asking you maybe a more detailed question. You say, oh, I actually, that's above my pay grade. Well, maybe they don't say that, but like that's what they're implying, right? They say, oh, why don't we do this? It sounds like you have some questions. I'd love to introduce you to my account executive, my AE. They may even say the word AE, which is like, if you said that to me and I didn't know what it meant, I'd be really annoyed by that. But they'll say something like that to get the meeting, right? And they do this handoff. And it's like, to me, I think to myself, my God, I'm ready to talk to you. I'm willing to talk to you. You just started the conversation with me 3.5 minutes ago. And now all of a sudden you want to introduce me to somebody else? Like, I don't get that. And like, I think that's like the people on the other end, some of them maybe, look, millions of meetings have been booked that way, right? So I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm just saying that, like, imagine what it feels like after he just met you. And I did a post the other day about it. It was like, I told the story about a guy walking, you go get a massage, right? And then, you get to know the masseuse as you're walking in, and they lay down and you put your face down and now you can't see anything. All of a sudden the door slams and you turn around and it's like, hi, I'm Jim, the masseuse. And you're like, what? And like a whole new person, and now you're half naked on the table, right? So it's like embarrassing. And so, like, how do you think that somebody else feels when you say that? So I felt like I've been able to set more meetings by simply just saying to them, you know what? It sounds like we could have a meaningful conversation. Why don't we reconnect at a time it's a bit more convenient? How's your schedule look like for 3 o'clock on Wednesday? Right? You already know that you can do that, right? You're checking his calendar or her calendar. And so you say it like that, and that continues to build that rapport for you, right? And so I think the handoff, and then what we do in our agency is when we start the meeting, we actually, as the SDR, I get on the meeting and I do a warm handoff then, right? Because now, instead of me just shoving them in their face on that call 3.5 minutes after I talk to them, now I get on the call, we're face to face. Say, hey John, how's it going? You and I had a conversation. I wanted to introduce you to my partner. He actually is gonna possibly lead this call. He knows a lot about XYZ, PDQ, and can answer a lot of your questions. I just wanted to jump on, put a name to a face, just say thank you for taking the time out of your day. I'll follow up with a thank you email. Have a nice day. And I get off, right? If they don't show, I can call up, I can call them, I could try to retrieve them to get them back to the meeting or reschedule right away. But otherwise, I'm there. I make that warm handoff. Why is that so hard? I can't hear you. You're on mute.
My dogs were getting annoying, so I muted myself. Sorry. I think in some scenario, I love a warm handoff when you can do it. I think, like, for us, we're pretty high velocity with meetings, and each BDR is supporting a handful of AEs, and we just don't scale when we do it that way. But if not, we make really clear from the get-go, like, here's who you're going to meet with and why not me. And the AE is fully briefed and prepared on what the conversation entailed, what they're expecting to get out of the next call, so everybody's on the same page. So too many times people are just thrown into it blind. I mean, it's happened to me, right? Like, oh wait, I didn't even realize we're the BDR, and now I'm meeting with this completely different person, and I have to make my entire use case and re-qualify myself to you, and that's just annoying.
Yeah, I mean, no, any way you do it, you got to create at least some kind of handoff. I mean, like, we'll even say, like, in the email confirmation of the meeting, we'll say, hey, above is CC'd my colleague John, who will also be joining the call, so they have some idea, and even if they show up and I'm not there as the BDR, then at least, like you said, you have some kind of handoff. You're right, Seth. There was a time when sales reps set their own meetings. That's called full cycle sales.
Yeah, right? I didn't have any SDRs.
Yeah, I was full cycle sales for, my whole career until COVID. And then, I started just doing, private kind of SDR work. Somebody saw me doing cold calls on the Discord and was like, I want to hire you. And I got my first sales job. I remember that Scott Leesewood, had conversations with him back then. And he was like, oh, you're 27 years in sales for not SaaS sales. So, and everybody said it was so hard. It's so hard to do. I think, like, in my third call, I set a meeting, but not bragging. I'm just saying that, like, it's just about people. It's just about conversations. And, full cycle to me was so I even though I enjoyed doing that, I could see why full cycle is a difficult pill to swallow in the VC world of tech sales and what have you, because you just can't support the volume of full cycle, right? You have to do customer success. You have to do onboarding. You have to be there for the open and the close. Like, I literally, as a rep at Sherwin-Williams, I had 400 accounts one time. I mean, I wasn't seeing them all, obviously. Some are bigger, some are smaller, but there was always a touch point, at least a phone call or something, or even, like, my marketing guys were touching them. But it was kind of like, I remember one time I went to a contractor to collect money. Not even my own. Sherwin-Williams, $1 billion company. It's not my money. It was $20,000. but they owed us $20,000. I walk in and I said, you owe me 20,000.
Yeah.
Can we work out a deal, right? And I'm like, he was looking at me like, what do you care? It's not your money. And I'm like, well, it's coming out of my bonus. How's that sound? And so, but like I was doing collection calls. Right now, it was like all of a sudden for the last 5 years it'll be 4 years in July, right? That I've been basically doing the SDR role amidst coaching, amidst building an SDR team and whatever. But I've been doing the deed every day. And like, it's almost like you said before about like who loves cold calling. Like I do it because I do like it. I like having conversations, but I do it because it's the fastest way to revenue.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people lose sight. They're trying all these other shortcuts. Email was the first shortcut, right? Chatting and this and that. It's just conversations to me is the key. So I want to know, okay, because you are in your kitchen, so maybe this is applicable here. I do know that if people don't know, you live in a home that supports the funeral business, so that's weird. But I love it because it makes you who you are and a fun person that you are. But food, music, yoga, exercise, what is it that gets you, Lydia Hutchison, over the hump of the week? It's Wednesday. It's 6:30 my time, but it's 3:30 your time. So eventually, the kids, you'll have to make dinner. Is there a certain kind of food you eat every day that gives you energy? What is it? How do you get through Wednesday? Because we're at the end of Wednesday. So.
I do not have children. I have 2 dogs that keep me extremely busy. They're a handful. But what I'm going to do as soon as we're done here is take them out for their walk. One of them is she's just a year old, so she gets really excited to go every time. And it's such a fun experience being outside with her. And we're lucky to have good weather here in California. So it's pretty much walkable any day of the year. Another thing that I've gotten into recently that is the biggest stress reliever is baking. I've always loved cooking. I think I'm a fairly decent cook, but last weekend on Saturday was like, I want an oatmeal cookie. And so I baked a batch and I didn't really like how they came out. And I did a bunch of research and I did another batch on Sunday and they were awesome. And then I was on a roll, and literally every day since then, I've made a different type of cookie to the point where I just this morning went and bought a KitchenAid stand mixer because I was sick of doing the hand mixing. And
you should. I wish I had this conversation with you. We have one that we don't use. It's brand new. It's beautiful. I don't know why we don't use it. Now you're making me think I should be using it.
All kinds of things. Finding occasions that I can bake things for. So that my second thing is, I know this
Christmas.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And
my wife bakes cookies. She does I don't know, usually just plain sugar cookies because my son only likes those. So she does green and red sprinkle things.
And baths. I know this sounds silly for a grown adult, but we have a really nice kind of like Japanese soaking tub here, which is like the sort of very deep. But you don't lay down, you sit.
Yeah.
My husband is not a fan of the water bill, but I take a bath every night.
Oh, that's awesome. If I had a jacuzzi, I would too. But I understand what that is, the sitting Japanese tub. I've seen that before. Is it teak outside of it?
No,
like
so
the face?
It's all tiled and
oh, it's tiled in the bathroom. Oh,
it fills from the ceiling. It's really cool.
Neat. That's pretty cool.
So it's this whole experience, right? This whole like relaxation thing. But yeah, baking and baths, those are my what keep me going these days. And
so how do we put those two together, right? Baking in the bath? No, baking in bath.
Cookies in the bath.
Actually, you have a store, like a storefront, right? It's like a spa, and you have spa stuff, and then you have this Japanese tub that everybody experiences, and then when you leave the place, they give you like a bag of cookies, homemade cookies. There you go. Good well, time. Listen, I definitely think that the week it's tough, like especially BDRs, SDRs out there, they're grinding it out all week. You're leading them, so I'm sure at the end of the week you just don't even want to speak about anything or talk about anything, And then if you do these things like every night, and it gives you that serotonin release, right? It just makes you feel much better about going into tomorrow, even if tomorrow's going to be a heavy day.
Right? So the same thing every day, but you can go in with renewed hope.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. What are you like? Obviously, some of them are listening, but what is the most difficult or most challenging thing managing a team of how many now? 20?
Oh, no. We're just 2 right now. I'm building here. No, in the past when I was at Keysight, they're a global company. I had a larger team. That was tough with time zones, I'll tell you that. But I think the hardest part about managing is just really the player coach dynamic, right? It's like I want to be in there doing stuff because I enjoy doing it, but also, trying to action and stay on top of things that are coming in and things that the team needs. And so time management is not something that I've always been great at. It's taken me many years to sort of learn how to stay on top of that.
And I think it's interesting, and maybe you put yourself out there to get management role. Like I faced sort of a challenge, I think is, and I'm not saying this like to try to pat myself on the back. I was leading a team. I'm building a team now, of course, but when I was leading a team at Tidal, and maybe it was just early, and that company wasn't really the right environment necessarily, but he made me the team leader or the BDR manager, and I was doing it for like a month and a half, not even 5 weeks, and like there was just like some of the BDRs just weren't producing, and he turned back to me and said, I need you to get back on the phones. And so I wound up really having to handle triage, for a lot of accounts. And I wound up slipping out of that role as a leader. I still was a leader there because I was still coaching and giving advice and doing those kinds of things, but I wasn't the manager,
right.
Like the BDR manager, which quite frankly, at that time I was like, well, all right, like I'll make some more money doing this. So, but I feel like that's sometimes a problem, or could be a problem, or was a problem for me, where like I always say, like being good at cold calling is a blessing and a curse at the same time, and like here I can't get another role because nobody wants to take me out of it because I'm producing. But one person, a very smart lady, a coach of mine, a mentor of mine, told me one time. I was a leader. I was a manager very early in my career, and I sucked at it. I probably did. Like I did. And like now I'm 51 years old and I have a kid, and I feel like I'm so much better at it now. Like I have so much more empathy, I think. But like, I think my problem back then was, I wanted them to do exactly the way I did, because I had just came up. I just crushed it, quote unquote, in my role. And now all of a sudden I'm the SDR leader. As it was back then, it wasn't really like that model, but and so they were like, I made mistakes, like I wanted them to do it. Like I wanted to grab the phone and be like, just give me the phone, I'll talk to the guy. Like, God damn it. Because we were in like a boiler room style type of environment, and like my boss trained me. He was screaming, yelling at me as I'm on the phone. One time I'm on the phone with him, with a customer, the guy's talking, I'm listening, he's yelling stuff at me, and he thinks I'm not listening, and he goes, put the guy on hold. And I was like, put the guy on hold. Put the guy on hold. And then he reached across the table and put the guy on hold. And I'm like,
oh my gosh,
how did you do that? That's crazy. He goes, I need you to get back on the phone and say this and ask him this. And if he says this, then you ask him this. And if he says that, then you book a meeting. And I was like, I picked back up the phone, and the guy was still talking, like as if he had no idea that I even. So yeah, coaching in the trenches, that's the way we did it back then. That's what that was called.
Yes, it really is. I've done it both ways, and this is by far my favorite and something I genuinely enjoy.
Yeah, well, glad to hear it's coming along. Love to check back with you in a few and see how the team is doing. Really appreciate you joining the call or joining the conversation. Glad to see you were able to draw some folks of your network to come and see us. I imagine there were more of your fans than my fans. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
They'll be your fans.
Really. Yeah, they're my fans now. Thanks. Well, listen, once again, thank you. I do appreciate it. Love chatting it up with you. Tell everybody where they can find you or the best way to reach you.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm gosh, not as active as I had been now that I'm so heads down, but definitely on LinkedIn. I'm pretty responsive there and keep an eye on things. So feel free to reach out. Thank you, Mark.
Well, thanks again.
Holiday.
Yeah, you too. Merry Christmas. Happy holiday, everybody. This is the last show for the year. Come back with season 2 of the Hump starting on January. What is that, first Wednesday? Not the first. It's something like, what is the date? The 8th?
Yeah.
Is it the first? The 8th, December, January 8th, where we have the one and only Glenn Poulos joining the show. So check him out. Thanks, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Peace.
See ya.